There was a time when I thought joy had left for good. Life hit me over and over until I didn't know if I'd ever feel whole again. But slowly, through pain, through faith, and rebuilding, I found my way back. Today, I want to share what hard seasons taught me about reclaiming joy when life feels like it's falling apart. Leaving the church that raised me. I grew up in the same church since I was like 14 or 15 years old. It was home to me, my second family. But as I got older, things started to change. There was my there was more control than community and more fear than faith. I was even told by leaders that my infertility struggles were somehow my fault because I wanted to leave the church. That crushed me, y'all. I was told that the reason why me and my husband couldn't get pregnant was because we had decided to leave the church. And the church, me being a part of this church, it started off as me attaching myself to something with purpose. I was a part of the church, and then I was a part of the youth and college ministry that was linked to the church as well. And I felt like I was doing something that mattered. I felt like I was giving back. It was amazing. But then after a while, as the church grew, it seemed like the mission started to change and it became more like a business versus us helping people. And so I started to realize, oh, there's a lot of control going on here, where I didn't realize that in my 20s when I was still attending the church. Because, your 20s, you're still young, you're still naive. But as I grew older, like, and got in my 30s, I started realizing, oh, I don't like this shift. I don't like this. And when me and my husband finally decided to go, the leadership told the people, a lot of the people that were in our community at the church, not to speak to us. And overnight, we lost friends. We lost mentors, people I thought would be in our lives forever. It felt like a funeral for relationships that were still alive. It was the most saddest thing ever. For months, probably even a couple of years, y'all, I grieved. Not just the people, but the version of me that thought church was always a safe place. It was so sad. Because we were a big community. We did everything together. We had children together. I mean, they had children together. At that time, I had miscarriages, so I hadn't had my daughter yet. But we got married together. We went on vacations together. We had sleepovers together. Us girlfriends having sleepovers, and it was one big family. And sometimes leaving what breaks you is the first step to healing you. Community shouldn't cost you your peace or your identity. So I want to encourage you today, if you have experienced church hurt, or if you are in a church and you realize something has shifted here, I want to encourage you. And I'm holding your hand. I'm holding your hand and saying you can do it. If you need to leave, leave. Because it's not worth your peace. It's not worth your identity. And I promise you, you'll find community. You'll find community elsewhere. But being in a controlled environment isn't healthy. And after leaving that church, I realized, oh, Richard, Oz was only Richard Pryor, that he was just a man, that I had put on a pedestal. So remember that leaving what breaks you is the first step to healing you. During the pandemic, I was living in Kuwait when my father passed away. During that time, the airport had closed and I couldn't get home to be with my father. He had called me and told me that they told him that he had cancer and he only had a certain amount of time to live. And if you can imagine, I was in panic mode because Kuwait wasn't letting people into Kuwait and they weren't letting you go, outside of Kuwait. And so growing up, my dad struggled with drugs and alcohol most of my life. Our relationship was complicated. There was so much I wanted to say and so much I hope we would heal and continue to build on. I had therapy at 18. And my therapist told me to talk to my dad and tell him how I felt about him. And we did. And I felt good about that conversation because I felt like he understood where I was coming from in terms of, you weren't there for me. You weren't there when um, a man in the family, a friend of the family, took advantage of me at a young age. You weren't there when I graduated from high school or couldn't graduate with my class. Um, and the hurt and disappointment I had with that. You weren't there when I got married. He just wasn't there. You weren't there when I had my first child. Um, and so, um, and so it was hard. It was hard to, um, I wanted to have that, a last final conversation, I guess closure, if you will. The day after he passed, Kuwait opened the airport, and it literally felt like the world was mocking my pain. I was like, really, really, God, like, you know, all of this time, like, during the pandemic, I'm waiting and waiting, and then the airport opens the day after my father passes away, and so, before the airport opened, I was on the phone with my dad and his doctors every single day. They were showing me his scans. They were telling me, the different medicines they were giving him, the shots that they were giving him, um, all of that. So I got a chance to see him every day, but it was more so just medical care, like talking about, what's making him comfortable, and all of that, and how many days they predicted he has left, and the moods that he was in and all of that. And so I carried so many emotions, y'all. Grief, regret, anger at the timing, sadness for what could have been. For a while, I didn't know how to move forward with all of those emotions that I was feeling. And one thing I realized is that grief teaches us that healing doesn't always come the way we want it to. Sometimes we have to make peace with words left unsaid and choose to live in a way that honors what we lost. And that's what I did. I had to learn to make peace with words left unsaid. And now I'm okay with that. I'm okay that I didn't get that last bit of closure that I thought I needed. But it all happened the way that it was supposed to happen. God allowed that to happen. He knew that that was going to happen, that they were going to open the airport the day after my dad died. Um, and so, um, just really learning that healing doesn't always come the way we want it to. There was a time when life felt so heavy, um, that I wanted to not be here anymore. I couldn't see a way out, y'all. I had been through so much loss, disappointment, and the pain stacking on top of pain, on stacking on top of pain. And one day I hit my breaking point and I did what I thought I needed to do not to be here anymore. And so I remember feeling like the walls were closing in, like the weight was too much, like maybe the world would be better off without me. And I remember when I was doing the act, my mom, and she doesn't know this until to this day, but when I was doing the act, my mom called me repeatedly. She just kept calling me and I kept sending her the voicemail. And finally, she left me a message, y'all. And she was like, hey, this is mom. I'm just thinking about you. And she started singing because she always sings when she gets on the phone with me. That's just her thing. That's what she does. And she started singing, hey, daughter, like, whatever, whatever. And she said, I was just driving and I was just thinking how amazing you are and how I can't imagine my life without you. And y'all, that like listening to that voice message, it broke me down. It didn't stop me from continuing to do what I was trying to do to not be here anymore, but it showed me that God really, really cares. And that in that moment, God was saying, no, it's not your time. This is not your time yet. And my husband just so happened to get off work early that day. He got off work early and he came home and he saw me, and we both sobbed like all night together on the floor. Sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. He was like, "No, you can't do this. You can't do this. Like, I can't, we can't, no, I need you in this life, you know?" And so, um, here's the truth. I'm still here. Thank God. I am still here. And looking back, I realized that that was the day I began to understand that asking for help didn't mean that I was weak. It means you want to live even when it feels impossible. I got help. I got therapy. I took small steps, y'all. And slowly but surely, hope started returning. Needing help is not a failure, it's proof that somewhere deep down, you still want to fight for tomorrow. I remember that when I didn't graduate high school with my class, I failed math, a subject that I struggled with for years, and had to finish in summer school with students that I didn't even know. I remember sitting there doing the ceremony, and I felt so embarrassed, y'all. Like I had let everybody down. Friends posted their cap and gown photos um, on social media, while I sat in a smaller room with kids from different schools just wanting to disappear. I had to graduate from 12th grade in summer school with kids from other schools that I didn't even know because I needed just one credit to graduate. I begged my school, please let me just walk with my class. I can still go to summer school, but let me just have the pleasure and the joy of walking with my class. Like, I worked hard all year, all of these years, like, please. And they were like, no. I was like, give me a dummy, you know, degree, diploma, but please let me walk. And they were like, no. Like, it was like they had no empathy for me at all. Um, and I felt like a failure. But here's what I learned, that delay is not denial. I still graduated. I still moved forward. That moment didn't define the rest of my life, unless wouldn't define the rest of my life unless I let it. And true story, my husband and I were good friends then. I was in the 12th grade and he was in college. And he and his college roommate, we were all good friends. And he invited me and some of my girlfriends to come visit him at his apartment in college. And when he opened the door, he was playing the Pomp and Circumstance song. And he handed me a cap and gown. He put a cap and gown on me, and he was playing the Pomp and Circumstance song. And we had a graduation ceremony in his apartment. And that meant the world to me, like the world to me. I felt seen. I felt special. I didn't feel like a failure. In that moment, I was like, yes, like life can go on. That moment didn't define the rest of my life. And sometimes the road takes longer than you plan, but the destination is still waiting for you. I remember I dated someone in high school for almost 2 years. We had so much fun together, y'all. We laughed. We were such close friends. Um, but when I realized the romantic part wasn't working, and I can't even say that the romantic part wasn't working, I think that I had outgrown the relationship. Um, he was a great person, but I just felt like it was time for me to move on from the relationship. I think I wanted more out of life than just being in a relationship. I wanted to figure out who Kimberly was outside of that relationship. Um, and in the 12th grade, I don't know, like I feel like I was light years ahead in terms of maturity and, self awareness and things of that nature. I thought he would understand because we were such good friends, but instead he got angry and he accused me of things that weren't true. The situation became intense and scary in ways that I wasn't prepared for. Um, and he pulled out a pow pow on me. And I was left shaken. I felt betrayed and unsure of who I could trust. For a long time, I blamed myself for that happening. But over the years, I realized someone else's reactions doesn't make me responsible for their choices. It taught me to pay attention to red flags, to trust my instincts, and to value my safety above someone else's approval. Sometimes the scariest moments become the biggest teachers about self worth, boundaries, and what real love should look like. And it was in that moment where I knew that this isn't love. And I'm so glad, as crazy as this sounds, I'm glad that that happened and that I didn't continue on in that relationship, because at some point it would have happened. At some point, something major like that would have happened in a relationship. I hadn't seen it for those 2 years, but there were red flags there that I ignored. And so, that was a big teacher for me to realize, you know what, Kimberly, as you are trying to find yourself, this realize that this isn't what real love looks like. And real love starts with loving yourself first. And because I love myself more than being in that relationship, I had to exit. I had to leave it. Joy didn't return to my life in one big moment. It came slowly, through therapy, through faith, through a lot of prayer, through honest conversations, and learning to let people in again. What's one small step you can take toward joy this week? Name 3 things that you're grateful for today, even in the middle of the storm. Gratitude doesn't erase pain, but it gives your joy a place to grow. I want to hear from you. If this video resonated with you, if this video encouraged you in any way, I want to hear from you in the comments. We got to keep this conversation going, y'all, so that we can grow together. And I want you to pass it on. And I wanted you to know that I love you so much today, and I'll see you in the next video.